Adam and Eve. Hi, I'm Eve. I'm sure you're wondering why you're listening to this. Maybe someone sent it to you. Maybe you stumbled on it while doom scrolling in bed with your bonnet half on. Or maybe you, like me, have mastered everything except your love life. Either way, welcome. See, I thought I had it figured out. The career, flourishing. The wardrobe, curated. The hustle, monogrammed. I was living the kind of life people screenshot on Pinterest mood boards labeled soft girl era. But what they don't tell you about soft girl eras, they come with some hard truths, especially when you're trying to build a life that feels as good as it looks. This is the story of how I met my Adam. But it didn't start with romance. It started with a reality check, the kind you don't post about. It started as a slow burn revelation over overpriced dinner during what I proudly called my soft girl era. I thought I was living my lightest, loveliest life, until I realized I was only brunching my way around emotionally unavailable men in cute outfits. That evening, I met with the man who unknowingly pushed me toward the one who would change everything. But before I tell you the story, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a creative director and founder of a boutique creative studio that's tucked somewhere between glass towers and brownstone charm, in a city that never remembers to slow down. The skyline here glitters with ambition, even at night. On any day, on any given street, you might pass a finance bro doing breath work, a painter selling art on a crate, and 3 people launching podcasts in the same coffee shop. It's a city full of stories, and I help people tell them. I teach creators and entrepreneurs how to build platforms, personal brands, online empires, stories that convert. My team is small but fierce. My planner looks like a beautiful lie. And yes, I'm the girl who brings a ring light to brunch, just in case. But for me, how I found true love, that's a long story. It started with a reality check. Anyway, it all began at a local, dimly lit brunch spot with velvet booths, live jazz remixes playing softly in the background, and a man who called himself an emotional minimalist. So there I am, dressed to kill, pardon my French, sipping on a $12 ginger shot and pretending it doesn't taste like spicy regret, sitting across from a man who has the jawline of a Greek statue and the emotional availability of a houseplant. We weren't dating, we were vibing. We were orbiting each other in that nebulous place between what are we and this is definitely not going anywhere serious. He had beautiful eyes, a full beard, a podcast, and the uncanny ability to turn any meaningful question into a TED Talk about his journey. He wasn't toxic, he was just slippery. Like trying to pick up Jell-O with chopsticks. Mid-mimosa, I take a deep breath, set my fork down, and say, "Hey, real question. Do you actually see this going anywhere? Us?" He pauses, smiles, does that thing where he looks away like he's searching for the most poetic way to deflect. You know, I just feel like life is about being present, he says. We rush toward outcomes and forget to appreciate the now. I blink. Sir, I didn't ask you for a meditation app voiceover. I asked if we were building something or just sharing aesthetically pleasing appetizers. Okay, I replied. But if I stay in the now much longer, I'll be 35 with 6 cats and no emergency contact. He laughs, deflects, again. And that's when it hits me. This man isn't a villain. He's just a walking loading screen. And I'm done buffering. Oh yeah, this wasn't my first emotionally elusive man. I once dated a guy who told me on our second date that his love language was space. Not quality time, not acts of service, just space. Like literal distance. I remember thinking back then that I could love someone into readiness, that if I was just cool enough, chill enough, quiet enough about my needs, he'd eventually choose me. Spoiler, he did not. Another time, I tried dating a man who believed we were energetically married after 3 dates. That was on me. I'd been dabbling in New Age spirituality at the time, manifesting, meditating, numerology, moon cycle intentions. I had just finished a crystal cleanse when he told me Mercury was in retrograde, and so was his commitment. I spent 6 weeks doing breath work and Googling our birth charts, and in the end, I learned 2 things. First, compatibility does not equal chemistry. And second, I am no longer available for men who say grand rising unironically. You're now watching Eternity Comics. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Anyway, back to dinner. He was now asking me if I ever thought about moving to Tulum and living off-grid. Which, okay, sounds poetic on Instagram, but feels less romantic when you remember he can't even commit to anything more than a dinner reservation. I nodded, but internally I was having a conversation with God. One that went something like, "Hey, Big G, I know we haven't talked in a minute, unless you count that time I prayed for parking at Whole Foods, but what is this? I used to think I didn't need love. I had goals, playlists, edge control, and a curated Instagram feed that suggested everything was blooming. But lately I'd been craving something real. Not the filtered, soft, aesthetic version of love. The kind of love that didn't just whisper sweet nothings, but spoke truth into my soul. One that felt sturdy, not performative. Sacred, not scripted. The gritty, mutual, God-breathed kind that doesn't flinch when it sees all of you. And spoiler, brunch guy wasn't it. But it wasn't his fault either. Earlier that week, while I was teaching a workshop on how to tell your story with confidence, I had an epiphany. While I was good at showing people how to tell their stories, for the first time in a long time, I couldn't tell where mine was headed. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing out on something life-changing. My soft girl life had grown into something I was no longer excited about. My journal, which was usually filled with wild stories, now sat empty on my nightstand like it was waiting for the new me to show up. That's when I knew. I didn't need more vibes. I needed more clarity. I needed certainty. I lit a candle. I meditated. I almost texted my ex, but played Oceans instead, and decided to heal. Sometimes growth is dramatic. Sometimes it's just choosing herbal tea over old habits. That evening, softness looked like putting on mascara, even if I wasn't going anywhere. and saying no to the thing that used to excite me, because deep down, it only made me feel more alone. Choosing a quiet night with myself, instead of forcing dead chemistry over cocktails, was a major win for me. I sat in my favorite chair with a warm cup of tea and started to reflect on my life. Really reflect. For the first time in a long while. I thought about what love looked like when I was a teenager, and those first messy years in the dating pool right after uni. I'm not sure when in my life I started to believe that love was something you had to earn. I'm not sure when I started to believe that to be chosen, you had to shrink, bend, perform. But I do remember how it felt. Like I was always one version of myself away from being loved right. Love became something you earned. You needed to make yourself smaller, quieter, more accommodating in order to be chosen. And if you weren't chosen, you made it make sense. You called it timing. You called it misalignment, while secretly thinking you were the problem. I didn't know it at the time, but my little flirtation with New Age spirituality, while still claiming I was raised Christian, had me slowly editing out the parts of me that actually made sense. Maybe it was the crystals, or maybe it was the fact that I spent more time scripting my future husband than actually talking to God. Either way, somewhere in that glittery chaos, I stopped recognizing myself. Somewhere between Sunday school with my parents and club raves with my girls at uni, I stopped believing I could have a great love. So I poured it all into work, into clients, into my brand, into becoming a woman who could build anything except intimacy. So, back to dinner. Again. I asked one more time, just to be sure I wasn't overreacting. So you really don't know what you want with me? He smiled like I had asked him his favorite season of The Office. I just think we have a great connection, and whatever happens, happens. Cool, so we're dating by vibes and divine coincidence. Right on cue, the waitress glides over with the check. He picks it up immediately, like clockwork. At least he was consistent about that part. He always insisted on paying, no matter what. Gentleman adjacent. He reaches for his card with ease and hands it off without missing a beat. And for a moment, I look at him. Really look at him. Not the curated version with the charm and the charisma, but the man who still hasn't made a single clear decision about me after months of shared meals, shared dreams, and text threads that always stopped just short of honesty. And it hits me. He'd never had a problem picking up the check. Just the commitment, the follow-through, the clarity, the courage to say, I want this, or even, I don't. It was all softness without structure, passion without placement, brunch with no blueprint. He would pick 30 more checks before he ever picked me. That realization wasn't loud. It was quiet, sharp, like the softest slice. It didn't break me, but it cut clean through the last bit of wishful thinking I had left. I took a sip of water, smiled, and said, "Thank you. This was enlightening, like a surprise plot twist, but softer." He grinned. "You're welcome. You're always good company." "I know," I said, grabbing my bag. "That's why I'm going to start saving it for people who actually want to keep it." He raised his eyebrows like he didn't expect that level of clarity with his croissant. Wait, are you leaving? Just like that? I gave a soft shrug. Not dramatic, not angry, just done. You said whatever happens, happens. I'm just letting it happen. He leaned back like he was processing, maybe for the first time. But I wasn't there to wait around for his awakening. I smiled politely, the kind of smile you reserve for strangers and ex-favorites. Take care, okay? I walked out of the restaurant and into the night, the city humming softly under a sky scattered with stars. Headphones in, Lana Del Rey meets Tasha Cobbs playing on shuffle. The skyline shimmered like it was holding its breath. And for once, so was I. Not from confusion, but from a quiet, settling clarity. That evening, I walked past couples holding hands, old men selling books on milk crates, a woman screaming into her phone about vegan cheese, and for the first time in a while, I didn't feel behind. I just felt ready. As I crossed a street full of people who all seemed to be going somewhere important, I had a thought. There has to be more than this. I want someone who gets it, who gets me. Then another thought. Maybe the soft life I want isn't about aesthetics. Maybe it's about honesty. Maybe it's about choosing faith over fear. Maybe it's about unlearning everything I thought love had to look like. My soft girl era used to be about brunches and candles and curated experiences. But maybe now, it's about alignment, about truth, about softness that can stand up for itself. The soft life comes with some hard lessons, and this was one I had to learn slowly. I didn't wake up transformed. I didn't have a big revelation moment. What I had was solitude, silence, and the uncomfortable realization that clarity asks you to sit still longer than you want to. During that season, I stopped trying to explain myself and started listening instead. That's when I wrote this song. Not because I had everything figured out, but because I didn't. It was the first time in a long while that I wasn't performing peace. I was actually looking for it. And somewhere in that search, God met me. This song is a snapshot of that moment.
It happened on a Tuesday, because of course it did. Mondays get all the credit for being hard, but Tuesdays are when the existential dread really sets in. I was walking through a park, half-heartedly pretending I had somewhere to be, when the sky turned a color that doesn't exist in any paint catalog. You know the one? That impossible mix of gold and apology. And there he was, God, sitting on a rusty bench, feeding pigeons like he had all the time in the universe, which annoyingly he does. He looked like someone's tired grandfather, wearing sandals and a sweater that didn't match. I was expecting thunder fire, maybe a harp solo. Instead he looked up at me with the eyes of someone who had watched the world ruin itself slowly, like a good piece of fruit left out on the counter. Your lady said, as if this was a meeting I was supposed to remember, I sat beside him anyway, Because what else do you do when God beckons you over like it's a casual coffee date? I asked all the stupid questions first. Why suffering? Why death? Why do people clap when a plane lands? God sighed, long and tired, like someone answering emails at 3 a.m. People love free will, he said, until they realize it includes the freedom to destroy what they're given. I nodded like I understood. I didn't, but I didn't want to look stupid in front of God, which frankly was laughable given my track record. We sat there for what felt like hours, or maybe a blink. Time didn't work the same next to him. I told him about the loneliness, the mess, the way hope sometimes feels like a joke no one else is laughing at. He just listened, really listened, not the way people do when they're just waiting for their turn to talk. No, he listened like every word I said carried the weight of galaxies. And when I finally stopped talking, feeling like I'd poured out the last drop of whatever held me together, he placed a warm hand on my shoulder. You're not broken, he said, you're just tired. Rest is holy too. And just like that he stood, dropped the last bit of bread for the birds, and walked off toward the light leaking through the horizon. I never saw him again, but every time I sit alone on a bench, I leave room beside me just in case he shows up, and we can talk again, or just feed the birds.